Now let's talk about this National Dialogue Committee report. It's not out yet, Shiko, but there's already some threats that should it lack a few things, then people might head back to the streets. As a young people, are you ready to go back to the streets, first of all? And do you have trust that this report will capture the aspirations of Kenyans? And what are those aspirations anyway?
One, I stand by saying this for me feels like a BBI 2.0. Like we've been down this road again in the name of national dialogue. The question I keep asking myself is national dialogue reduced to political leaders who then have their own interests, and then after that, it's done? And I love the fact that one party is coming out and saying, you know what, if we are not talking about the economy, then we do not want to be part of this. Because that was the initial conversation that we needed to have before they have all these conversations about creation of new offices that will need to tax Kenyans further so that they sustain them. For me, the conversation about the economy should be critical if this thing is anything to go by. Are Kenyans willing to go to the streets? I think Kenyans should be in the streets already.
Are you going to go to the streets?
I will go to the streets. Okay. Do you know why? Because when you elect people and they have all their priorities wrong, then just as Mwangaza, you might want to dissolve your government. Why? Because you cannot every day talk from two sides of the mouth. You cannot one day say we are not borrowing, then the next day we see IMF saying they've given you billions of money. You cannot every day have people sitting, I'm sure these people have allowances. They've been sitting since before June, right? Again and again trying to say we're trying to come up with a guide to a national dialogue or something. I think the dialogues, the same way they come for votes at the community level, that's where the dialogue should be happening. The same way this government is claiming that Mama Mboga and young people are benefiting from Hustler Fund, they should go to those Mama Mboga the same way they went to understand what is the situation and what should be here. And I also don't think we need it, because we have a constitution that we have failed intentionally to implement so that some people remain in power, so that some people have their way out.
Okay.
So maybe the focus should be 12 years down with a constitution. What do you want to do different? What are we looking at implementing better before we even start coming up with? Because the economy comes from where you get your basic rights, right? So if this government was kind enough to say, you know what, we're just looking at Article 55 of the Constitution and say, they're young people, this is what they need education. You see what they're doing to our education. Even Moi, who we term as the worst person, never touched the education fund. We have a lot of greedy people who are going for everything.
Okay.
So for me, I honestly feel like if it's to go to the streets, it should not be because these two parties are not agreeing. It's because Kenyans are tired and they've reached their limit and they need to go out there and demand what is right for them.
Okay. Mudiora, you've been on the streets for quite some time now. Do you first have faith that this report will capture the aspirations of the people and what they really want? And is it fair to call for demonstrations this early?
In text, it may. The problem is when we come to implementation. They will write everything that we would wish to hear. But as we've seen, practice is something else. Now, going to the streets at this point is not an option for me. I actually would rather not. And I would urge all those who can to pursue other means. Allow me to give you a background. Yesterday, Parliament passed that the deployment to Haiti should go on. Even though we know there is a live court case going on that's to be determined in January of next year. So clearly, we see disregard in how we approach whatever we are doing as a government. That's why I say this government does not know how to govern. Yes, they have majority representation in parliament, but then that parliament has been captured for selfish interests. We've been told that there should be no taxation without representation. Clearly today, ordinary Kenyans are not represented in our parliament. Kenyans did not agree with the Finance Act 2023-2024, but it was passed anyway. It has brought our economy where it is right now. We've seen the proposal to increase levies and taxes. Gazette notices have been flying. The only thing that the cost doesn't change is actually the Kenya Gazette. It's at 10 shillings, but everything else has shot up. So if I was asked how we should approach this, I think as we approach the 2-year threshold, Kenyans should now consider recalling their MPs. I know people may say it will be an exercise in futility because of the hurdles that we must overcome, but we should not go to the streets if maybe we can try something in our constitution that could save us. Parliament is captured. This government told us that once, actually in 100 days, not once they sit pretty, in 100 days they'll form a task force or something like that to look into state capture. Right now, they've been chasing all the cartels we had, and they're becoming cartels themselves. So they've captured Parliament. They've captured everything else that should be independent. Since it's not serving us, I think it's time Kenyans now recalled their parliamentarians.
Why wouldn't you go to the streets? And you've been there
I
for
know.
quite some time.
I'm just like, you've been in
Well,
Interesting.
we've tried, and it has not yielded the results that we desired. For instance, the last time we were in the streets, we wanted the government to address the high cost of living. You recall over 30 people lost their lives. Journalists and call it press freedom was muzzled. We had all these injustices that are yet to be addressed to date. So on top of every problem we had, we added more problems. We did not get any solution besides the bipartisan talks that are currently going on.
Okay.
Yes, we've been taken seriously, but just a bit. But I think if we said we are recalling this parliament, if we went back to Mashinani, collected those signatures, took them, petitioned properly, maybe they'll take us more seriously. Our MPs will now not listen to the man at the top. They will come back to the village and listen to us, because then we will tell them what we want implemented in Parliament so that the executive can do what the common man wants.
All right. Omulo?
Trevor, quick one. You know, sometimes we should not spread rumors. Even as we criticize government, we should also give credit where it is due. We promised that we'll fight with we'll fight cartels and state capture. And I can tell you for a fact that, you know, we don't have to go and announce that today we have found X as a cartel or a state capture and we are dealing with them. But President has made pronouncements that have given a conducive environment to fight corruption. Corruption is one thing that we have to fight. You've seen the progress in fight against corruption. Two, you've seen we have eliminated cartels in the tea sector, in the miraa sector, in the coffee sector. We have eliminated cartels in the farming sector or agricultural sector by subsidizing production. We have eliminated the middlemen, and we have eliminated the middlemen in the fuel sector. So the strategy is totally different. We don't have to go there and announce publicly that there is a cartel here and we are dealing with them. Secondly, in regards to
just yesterday, 67 were suspended by Felix Kosgei. So
yes.
There is something that's
something is a progress. Is a progress
that Shiko doesn't agree.
And this famous pronouncement.
Those are government officials, not cartels.
No, they are not government, but at least there's something that president is doing. Secondly, in regards to the talks. You know, first of all, I have to applaud and I have to appreciate these people and even the opposition leader for the fact that we have peace in this country. You look at the genesis of the maandamano or the protest. First of all, the initial agenda was about the server. And, you have to remember that the cost of living is an issue up to date. There are issues that they've discussed, which are very important, but there are also issues that needs to be addressed in both sides. Issues like electoral justice, issues like, CDF, issues like office of the opposition leader, office of the PCS, and other issues that two-thirds gender. These are very, very important issues that President himself made it clear that they have to be implemented. Okay. Secondly, the issue of cost of living is the responsibility of the sitting government. But as we speak, even as we support government and we're part of the government, we need to urge the president, because it is the responsibility of the opposition to provide checks and balances. When we talk about fuel prices and levies, it is important that we have a national discussion on how the president can reduce fuel prices, how he can come up with a clear framework that will ensure that the cost of living is brought down. And he has come up with a clear, radical changes in subsidizing production, which you can see indicators. Initially, even before Ruto was sworn in, price of unga was at 230 and 250. Right now, we can proudly say it is 145, the lowest, to 175.
Where do you
1 kg, 1 kg,
So
where do you buy your?
1 kg of gorogoro is now 70 to 100 shillings. The highest is 120. At least you can see progress.
Let's just,
I buy my unga.
Yes.
You walk to any supermarket, you will get the prices are there. It depends on where you buy. If you buy in Lavington, with some brands, you can buy up to 200. So it depends with what you eat. But the lowest that Kenyans get is about 145 to 175.
I am totally going to say
Okay,
that's
Trevor,
what I wanted
Trevor,
to say.
Yeah.
About the
But
price of
Mutiara
unga,
kindly.
yes.
that I will support him. Like, if you look at today's newspaper, there is a newspaper that has the price of dollar unga at 149 in the supermarket.
But do not confuse offers. Do not confuse offers to the actual price. And I'll say this. I'm hearing you out, and I love the fact that you're also saying cautiously, but you don't want to say that we failed when it comes to cautioning people. You promised us in 100 days, unga will be at 100 bob. Stop giving us the histories of how it's going low, because unaenda pale Naivas unapata kuna offer. Unga ni 140, oh tumeshukisha unga. And then after 1 week, it goes back to 200, and then you have to come and tell us, apana, ni cartels. These conversations are not making sense. I don't know if it is a Kenya Kwanza oath to lie to Kenyans every day. I do not know. But it does not really make sense when you come sit here honestly and try to tell us how the government is putting in efforts to do that. And I will also tell you, even 145, if that's the case where you buy, it's not enough. You said in 100 days it was going to be 100 bob. We are 1 year later. Okay. You cannot be telling us about
you're about in terms of state capture bill.
Yes.
And do you agree that our legislators have somehow failed? How do you explain that the Finance Act, 90% of Kenyans rejected it? This was a survey done by the civil society groups Tuaweza and Center for Fiscal Affairs, CFA, showing 90% of the people rejected the Finance Act, but it was passed anyway.
Trevor, before I go there, let me just state clearly. You know, they're saying, oh, Kenya Kwanza lying, everybody's lying. I feel that is personal. I vied, I supported the Kenya Kwanza manifesto. I'll stand by it. And I know the government and anybody cannot be 100%. And I'm happy that I have been able to interact with the president during the campaigns at a personal level, and I know the kind of a leader he is, that he's always in touch with what is happening. He's always following up on what is happening and how things can change. And as you can see, there's a retreat. The government officials are retreating, and part of the retreat, I believe, is trying to look at what are the issues, because we saw that the parliamentary group meeting in State House, most of the MPs were saying, you know, what our constituents are telling us and what is happening, there could be a problem somewhere. So I believe even if it was Azimio that took power, we would have not expected things, a turnaround you know, in 1 year, everything changes and all our lives, we are all driving, we are all fine. So
the government have given more realistic
Exactly.
Because now we saw the government spokesperson saying we need at least 2 years. Is that what the narrative should have been from the onset?
From the onset.
Nobody says that they've been lied to.
No, but it depends with, you know, when they were saying 1 year, when we were saying 100 days, sometimes you say before knowing the situation.
How? They were in government.
Come on.
They were in government, Billion.
They were not in government.
So sometimes you
know.
go in there and then you find the reality is different.
Different, yeah. And I remember there's a time that when Sonko came into power as the governor, he said, City Hall, there's a hall in the city. So instead of what he expected, what he thought were happening at the city hall were not the same. So I could feel the same. And I want to be honest, and I want all of us to be honest. Do you think the president would sit somewhere with the team and work on making the lives of Kenyans miserable?
He would.
No.
Doing so.
Yes, Mudiora.
It's happening.
Yeah.
Let me help Billion.
Yeah.
On Valentine's Day this year, the president was recorded assuring Kenyans that he will not allow for taxes or levies to be increased. That was February this year. What happened in June when the Finance Act was passed? He made Kenyans' lives even more difficult. And by him, I mean he's the head of government. He's the head of the Kenya Kwanza regime. He could have done it differently. So about lies, surely, you can.
How different could this be done? Because you see, Mudiora, the reason why I want you to answer that is because you've been a former presidential running.
Yes.
What will be your advice now at this particular point? So you get into office, you find that you have debt that you need to repay, you don't have enough in your coffers. Yes, you had made promises. What would you do? Do you come back to the people and tell them, guys, this is it for us, we are all in a bad situation? Or what would you do?
Now, number one, I would not find myself in that position because I'm an honest and sincere person. I would give realistic promises. The promises that were given to Kenyans were not realistic. They meant to hoodwink us. So they sold to us that
they deliberately lied.
Yes, that's what they did. Right now, they need to admit that the bottom-up model is a flop. They were experimenting on Kenyans. It's not going to work. They need to tell us the truth that they did not have a plan to get us out of the hole we were in. They've been groping in the dark. Instead of stopping the digging, they've been digging us deeper and deeper. I mentioned about the deployment of the 1,000 police officers in Haiti. That has already cost us 36 billion, Trevor. So when yesterday Kenya inks a deal with the IMF...
Though we are not funding it ourselves.
Yeah.
Well, the promise is money will come. But we have already spent our own 36 billion. You check the books, you'll see. It's there. So when you hear an MP correctly stating that there is rent-seeking in progress here, we need to not imagine that he could be right. I mentioned about state capture. Just allow me to finish about this, Trevor, and you seem to want to defend this situation. When we have those other very ugly details, okay? Fuel never cost as much as it does today. Our biggest export market, that's Uganda, was happy with how things were. When this government took over, in the process of the new cartels kicking out the old cartels, we've lost our leading export market, Uganda. They are now opting to trade with Tanzania. So, Trevor, state capture is real. We were promised it would be addressed. That was another lie. We have new sheriffs in town, and they are hungrier than the others we had before.
Okay. Mulo?
Trevor, first and foremost, I said that we needed to be very frank, honest, and realistic.
You're not.
It is very easy to criticize government because you're not part of it. And he has not answered the question, the alternative view. Maybe he would have advised the president. But look at how things have, how president has fared on. One, he promised within 100 days. There are things he promised and he achieved. One, He promised that within 100 days, he will launch Hustler Fund. He did that. You can now see the success stories. Within 100 days, he said he will return the port of Mombasa. He did it. That is a success story. 3, he promised to employ the judges. He did that. That is a success story. He promised Kenyans that immediately will give finance autonomy to the police service. He did that. At least now they have finance autonomy. He promised that judiciary will be given more funds. That is a success story. He promised the cost of living, unga to reduce to 100 shillings. That has been the contention because, this is not Ruto's problem. It is a global issue. And all other factors put on the table, there are measures that Ruto has put in place to ensure that the cost of living is reduced. One, we have subsidized fertilizer from 6,500 to 2,500. We have increased production. Acreage of 200,000 acreage. That is the new, agricultural sector that has really improved. Right now, we have increased, harvest, addition of 18 million bags. We are currently buying those bags, one bag at 4,000 shillings, which means that we are cushioning farmers, and we want to ensure that our stores are full, and we know that the food security is secured. So the issue here is the cost of fuel, which is bringing problem, which is a global issue, and it's the discussion that we need to have. Secondly, we have employed 50,000 teachers. That is a plus. It is a plus. It is something that has never been done before. Okay. We have successfully funded counties without any problem. For the first time, we gave counties money at a record of every 5th of the month, they have received their money. So, I've never seen governors complaining. Ruto is doing his best. Look at the education sector. Nowadays, you can see kids. There's equity in terms of funding when it comes to the CBC and also at the higher level, level. Look at the housing sector. Ruto has launched over 40,000 houses, which has created 50,000 jobs for young people. The engineers, electricians, plumbers, and other people. So sometimes we are progressing on well. We cannot criticize government. Sometimes let us be constructive and give credit where it is due.
Okay, so let's talk about the solutions now. So now that we are here,
I think
there's two sides to the story. Everybody says it on their own perspective. In fact, Turanira has also sent another screenshot saying it's 36 billion on the Hustler Fund that has been sent out, plus a screenshot of what the president said, 36 billion, clearly that has been spent out. But what is the solution going forward now at this particular point? We're all young people here, so what do we do?
I think, Trevor, and I started by acknowledging that for sure, we are having a problem with the cost of living. And I can state that all this has been pegged on the cost of oil, and I was fortunate enough that a few weeks ago I have spent 2 weeks in Norway, and Norway is an oil producing country, and right now they are experiencing the highest cost of living, cost of oil, than ever. So it means this is
so globally it's reducing, billion.
Yeah, but I know it's reducing. I'm just saying what is happening. Like, it is an oil-producing country, and right now they've never had the cost of fuel high than it is right now, and this is affecting even the economy, the cost of living. So I believe, coming down to what we are going through now, I remember the last government had subsidies, I think, and I hope that the retreat that the government is having now is to look at some of the issues that we have been talking about. The president has been listening to people, has been listening to guys talking on media, he's been listening to his advisory team, and I believe he has been looking at ways of giving a lasting solution So I think if we can't have the lasting solution now, let's have a Panadol that can help us jump to the next stage, and hopefully this retreat will give us a solution that we can reduce the cost of living down kidogo.
Okay.
But I want us just to acknowledge that it's not just a Kenyan problem, because we talk about it as it's a Ruto problem, it's a Kenya Kwanza problem, it's nyinyi na wengine wako sawa.
So we're looking at them. The family, if there's no food in your house, everybody looks at you, right? But let's take a look at what the feedback you're saying right now. Trevor Mbija at Citizen TV Kenya, use the hashtag Daybreak. Let's bring that up and see, before I come to all my panelists, to hear what your solutions are going forward. What do you recommend to the government now going forward? Brian says, we cannot run from the truth. We can use big English to argue, but the fact remains. The cost of living was very high during the Uhuru regime, and in less than 2 years, the cost of living is going down.
Wow.
Okay? But Michael says, I wonder how Omulo can afford to defend unpopular policies which are in public domain. I feel they have lost touch with the said Mama Mboga and Boda Boda, and they will only remember them when the next election nears. Nice political games. Okelo Mwalimu says KK regime shouldn't join the same hustlers whose lives they've dismantled in mourning. They shouldn't tell us that they know our suffering, since that's the springboard through which they sprung the office. Our sufferings don't need binoculars, we need solutions. I think we read this earlier on. Angela Lazaro says, Mr. Mulo Jr., please go and advise the president not to ignore our crying for the cost of living. This issue will come over to haunt his entire regime. He can't grow an economy by raising taxes or charging citizens normal government services. I think we'd read that on also earlier on. Ole Shonko says, when Azimio says that if the cost of living will not be discussed, they won't accept the outcome of the talks. Were they part of the discussion from the word go? Okay. Nathan says, I've tried to raise my credit score by borrowing every month for the past 12 months to get a good amount for the so-called business, but it has only increased from 700 to 1,500. Success story.
Because he did not pay.
Felix, success is replicated. The effects of the 36 billion borrowed should have been seen across the economy. But kufinywa and a harsh economy is making the gains go down the drain. Okay? Kenya Minde says Ruto was DP for 10 years and even had his people in high government offices, including Treasury. To say that he did not know the true state of the economy when he came in is a lie. Yeah. He knew. Nation Kemboy says, high cost of fuel and electricity has made the issue of subsidy on production irrelevant. No more bottom-up agenda, buried in a grave deeper than 6 feet. Okay. Going forward, solutions now as we wind up on this conversation. Omulen, I'll start with you. What is your advice to the president now as a young person yourself?
I want to look at the president straight and tell him, first of all, let him deal with the cost of fuel. Let him reduce the VAT from 16 to 8%. And also the members of parliament should discuss, because it's an issue that can be discussed in parliament. They can revise the taxes, especially targeting the cost of living. Secondly, the president should not bow down to pressure that comes from opposition, because there seems to be a lot of blackmail when it comes to dialogue. It seems that some people are, hiding their cards under the table because maybe they are negotiating for more positions. I don't think they are genuine enough. If they are really genuine, let them adopt the report. And other reports that have been there before, like TGRC report, WACO report, those reports are just gathering dust. They have a very, very good recommendation that can help Kenyans. Third, and finally, it is important that as Kenyans, let us give President time to implement his policies. The President is elected on a 5-year ticket or term. I think we are only 14 months and he is still implementing the first budget. So let us wait for the second financial year to see if things will improve. I can tell you for a fact that there are good things that the president has done, and the cost of issue should not be a platform where the opposition are using it to criticize every good thing that the president has done to Kenyans.
Yeah, Mudiora says we should recall our MPs. Do you agree with that?
Members of parliament, sometimes, they need to defend the president and also help the president to make sound policies that will ensure that we have a proper foundation to grow the economy. But they should also be alert because they are representative of the people. They should listen to the people and they should focus and act independently as members of parliament. Some of them...
None of their roles revolves around defending the president. It's legislation, oversight and representation.
That is why I'm saying they need to work together because the parliament or legislation is legislator is totally different from the executive. They are separate, but they need to work around it and help the president implement his agenda when it comes to parliament. But what I've seen in parliament, especially members of parliament that comes from the opposition, they lack strategy. And that's why they make a lot of noise. They lack strategy on how they are supposed to provide checks and balances. It is very unfortunate that they'll wait for Mandamano or maybe any other good things to tell Kenyans, but they have failed terribly. So but it's very important. I saw our former Prime Minister, Raila Odinga, is doing his work, and keeping government in check is very important so that Ruto can be very active to ensure that he implements every bit of promise that he gave to Kenyans.
Okay. Mudiora, advice to the government as you make your closing remarks as well.
Well, I would wish to advise the president that the current unity seen in Kenya is not sponsored by his good work. Kenyans are united by their struggle against the cost of living. So he needs to put in measures to ensure that the next budget, now that we have supplementary budget 1 already done, addresses to reverse the damage that the Finance Act that was passed has done. The Kenya shilling continues to be under pressure. The diaspora is doing a protest that starting from December 1st, they'll not be remitting to Kenya, yet the inflows have been helping the shilling quite a big deal. Let him look to implement measures that are not punitive. Whatever we've seen with regard to KRA and customs and at the airport and all these misses they keep getting wrong, they need to get their acts together. Kenyans are asking, why should I pay taxes when I have at the same time to pay exploitative taxes and levies? Let him do everything he can to take that question out of Kenyans' minds.
Okay. As a sidebar, what have you been up to since you ran for running mate, for presidential running mate?
He's doing business.
Well, I am a businessman, that's for sure. But in the background, we've been building the great nationhood party of Kenya. And like I told you, we feel that all those members of parliament not true to their calling deserve to be recalled.
Okay.
So this is something we are working on, and I urge Kenyans to come together. If you don't feel represented, recall that MP. Okay.
Would you run again, having gone through the rigors of it all?
Well, after the injustice that was meted on me in 2022 by Wafula Chebukati, I think if electoral justice is not addressed, there would be no point. I've told you, state capture in Kenya right now is at a new level. So we just do things for formality. If the bipartisan talks allow for us to address electoral justice and we have a commission that will not be partisan, then of course I'll be running for president of the Republic of Kenya in the consequent election.
Okay. Shiko, advice to the president as we make your closing remarks.
Villain just called me someone's running mate and I wasn't buying, but anyway. So, Bwana President, I come to you again, and I think this is 1,000,001 time that I'm saying this. 1, stop giving people jobs that don't deserve. You're costing us more, and it's not worth it. 2, you can only stretch someone's payslip too far. You cannot keep targeting people who have pay slips for your taxes. It does not work that way. It's an injustice, and you need to stop because that will not help you pay the debts that you're borrowing. 3, stop borrowing. You promised that you were not going to borrow from the word go. We cannot sit here and see IMF giving more money and more money to us, then you're planning on how to now start taxing the air we breathe, maybe. I don't know. But please stop it, because it's not taking us anywhere and it's not going to lead anywhere. 3, taking our police to Haiti is not a solution for you to get more money from the West. Why am I saying this? We have not dealt with our own criminal gangs. We are not going to help Haiti. Those people who are funding Kenya to go to Haiti should take their policemen, their army, and whoever else if they feel that is a problem. We cannot be the African colonizers of the places that are more oppressed by the West. 4, right? Our education sector. Stop terrorizing our kids. You are messing with the education system by taking away the hope for that Mama Mboga you spoke about, that border person you spoke about, to take their kids to school and sustain them through the higher learning. We need to stop, and you need to wake up to the realization that your hustler narrative has been exposed. It's enough with the lies. Let us move to a better place. Come out and say, I can't. Kenyans will then figure out who can for them. And at the same time, with the same breath, I would say, stop planning to change the constitution, because that is not a solution. The solution lies with you actually implementing the constitution that lies there, and the policies and reports, like Omula said, that needs to be looked into. And finally, as a Kenyan citizen and a disappointed young Kenyan, you cannot keep giving us hustler narratives and acting tough when Kenyans are dying. Within 2 years, we do not know how many will survive. Within 2 years, we do not know how many more will have committed suicide. It is high time you wake up to the reality that since you live in State House and might not know what it costs to buy bread or buy tea or anything, you've been in government before for 10 years, and this time you have no excuse. Yours is different because you've tested it and you've known the worst of it. And you need to know that if you do not have a plan, we are headed nowhere. And Bwana Ruto, tafadhali. Our roads are messed up. Our hospitals are messed up. And more young people are dying in those hospitals. And I speak saying, you might have the access to abroad treatments, a medical cover paid for by taxpayers who are getting 500 from your hustler fund kitty. It is not enough with whatever you're doing.
Okay. Billion.
For me, I am an optimistic young person who believes and hopes for the best. And I think that is what we should, as young people, sell to our fellow young people, that, you know, things might be hard today. And if you look at even the stories of people who've been successful, and not everything have been rosy. So as an optimistic young person, I want to urge the president, because I was able to interact with him at not a personal level, but a close level. And I know the kind of person he is. One, he's in touch with what is happening. And two, he listens to every person. So as they have the retreat of the senior government officials, on behalf of the people of Mathare, I want to request humbly, Mr. President, to just look at the issues that the Kenyans have raised, the young people have raised. And one, it's only one, the cost of living. Just one, the cost of living. So if you address the cost of living, I think we'd be able to adjust. But I also want to come back to my fellow young people. I used to be a city boy. I would do everything in the city. But when I realized that it is not just a Kenyan problem, that sometimes things become tight and we need to adjust, I looked for other alternative measures to cover up some of the things, because even if we complain today or tomorrow, you know, life will continue. So let's adapt other alternative measures. You know, I started farming when they were talking about the bay of unga. The last time that I bought unga, I can't even remember, because I get my unga from my farm. So let's also look at alternative measures. 3, we strongly criticize the national government, and some of the county governments are not functioning, and we've diverted our focus from the county governments who are very close to us and just focusing on the national issues. So I would also ask the same breath, the same energy that we are using to criticize and to correct the national government. Let's also direct the same to the county government, because they also receive budget allocations, and because all of us are focusing on the national issues, they can easily get away with so many things. So as an optimistic young Kenyan, I want to urge our fellow youth that let's believe that the brighter days are ahead, and let's give the president time to...
All right.
Trevor,
Because we've run out of time.
let me just say this.
Community organization.
Trevor, I will
Political affairs LC.
No.
And Mudiora Kariana,
You have a farm.
running mate and party leader TGN. Thank you all for making time. Coming up next is DJ Roy T-Boy on the decks. All right. Have a great weekend ahead.